Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Nancy Drew. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, Nancy learned, alright, there's some secrets, there's at least some stuff, some contention between Lucy and her mom. There was at least something that she had shared with, Nancy's mom. And so now she wants to try and meet with her as an attempt to find out, maybe not necessarily that she killed Lucy, but obviously maybe she knows enough that can point in the right direction potentially who did, because obviously Nancy's still striving to find some evidence to prove that her dad is innocent. So obviously she goes to Josh to try and get help, but obviously can't, because obviously his mom is locked up in a mental facility, and it's like, well, that's not, I guess for him it's just like, well, she hasn't quite been the same since she had a stroke, and it's just like she's not in a cognizant enough place and a good enough place to really kind of be treading down that lane again, because obviously for him it's like, I would want answers if there were any about Lucy, but for him it's like he spent the past 20 years hoping for that, and he's not being hopeful anymore about that. But Nancy ends up turning to George and Nick for help, because it turns out, because obviously she learns about the little secret thing that, Nick kind of bought the restaurant and everything. And it's like, oh, okay, so I guess we'll be working together now. So, obviously, once again, it's still this weird awkwardness of like, yeah, George and Nick kind of like each other. And Nancy's kind of in that process because she's caught between the whole Owen situation and Nick, and it just, everyone can kind of feel it in just that awkward silence. And like, oh yeah, we can work together and everything, right? So yeah, so she needs their help kind of breaking into the facility, and it's like, oh, how are we going to go about breaking into the facility? Well, one of two ways: an air vent or down below. So that in itself turns into an interesting event, like, breaking. And there was even that moment of like, oh yeah, like I forgot what it was. George was referencing something. And like, the reason why Nick decided to go down instead of up the air vent. And you can tell like Nancy was kind of looking over her shoulder, listening to the conversation, and like, oh, there's something there. Like I said, Nancy, she's pretty good at picking up stuff and reading people, and I think she's starting to get those inklings that there's something there, but she never says anything. It's just you get that moment of her kind of turning her head a little bit, kind of like looking from the corner of her eye, like at them talking like that, like getting all buddy and stuff like that. And it's like, well, they never had that relationship before, but now they're definitely getting closer, and it's becoming super obvious to her. But what I thought was kind of an interesting element to this episode was like, the fact is, I don't know, like, I mean, there's definitely like a very sinister supernatural element to the show in general, but I guess because it's a mental hospital plus sinister supernatural stuff just adds an even creepier element to this episode, especially because it's like they come out and they're just like, okay, they said this side of the ward had been shut down like a little while for reconstruction, but then it's like, why does it look like it's been shut down for a while? They open the door and then it's like, oh, I guess we're at the rest of the hospital. Okay, then you see the creepy bouncing ball, and I'm like, okay, super creepy. So it's like, okay, so what is this going to end up being? And we end up learning a lot of interesting things, because I think that I love this being a beautiful element, an interesting element in the show. Is the fact is that there are constant ramifications from that seance that they had. It's like they literally they keep dealing with more and more that has come. It's like, oh, this came about because of the seance over and over and over again, so there's no telling how much stuff in Horseshoe Bay. Like there probably was already a little bit of a supernatural side with Lucy and a little bit with Tiffany, but mainly Lucy. But now it's full-blown supernatural because of their seance and everything. It opened the door to let a lot of stuff through, because they end up meeting, because Nancy ends up meeting a dude who works at the facility, and the fact of the matter is, he ends up telling Nancy, like, oh, like a couple weeks ago, like there was a haunting. He's like, no one wanted to listen to him because he started noticing like the moss, not the moss, the I'm blanking on what that's actually called. I literally said it in the episode, but I can't think of the damn word right now. But nevertheless, obviously it's starting to spread, and it seemed like it spread even more because it turns out they actually got a priest there to kind of like sanctify it. So it was actually held back behind the door until they came from the other side and opened it up and kind of basically spread it to the rest of the hospital. But I thought it was kind of interesting because constantly throughout the episode, you'd see like maybe Nick would notice it and Nancy would notice it, but then it almost seemed like no one else in a hospital would. But I guess it's like once you kind of been touched by the supernatural, so that being Nancy, Nick, as well as George have all been touched by the supernatural. So maybe they've kind of got like some supernatural awareness now. So they're seeing stuff that no one else is, or just, it just seems like literally everyone else in the hospital is completely oblivious to what's going on. And then there's the element where Nancy ended up talking to Lucy's mom, but obviously her mom isn't quite there, because at first when Nancy starts talking to her, her mom thinks it's, what was it, 1999, and ends up thinking that Nancy is actually her mom. And so it's interesting because obviously for her it's like, because obviously this is around the time, like obviously those rumors are spreading about Lucy, and she's like, no one knows my real Lucy or whatever. And because the mom is kind of like, oh yeah, what did Lucy tell you? Just how of a bad mom, or how much of a monster I am. So it is a situation of, it doesn't seem like she did anything bad to Lucy. She would never hurt Lucy. She loves her daughter. It's just a situation of, she was probably a very stern parent, and obviously Lucy probably kind of rebelled. But the fact of the matter is her mom did whatever she could to protect her and look after her. And she ended up referencing the fact is like, who are you? You just came here to talk to me about Lucy like that other lady, which I'm like, who's that other lady? A couple things kind of come into my mind. First I was like, Karen, but Karen and Lucy were besties, so I feel like she would have known, but maybe because it's been so long, maybe Lucy's mom didn't recognize Karen. Then the other side of things is like, well, would she have recognized Cecilia? She might have never Miss Hudson's, is it Celia or Cecilia? I think it's Celia. Regardless, I don't know if she's met her enough to really know what she would look like. So that's why I'm kind of thinking maybe her. Because like, what other lady? I was like, not unless it was Tiffany, but I feel like that would have been like, I don't know. So that's why I'm kind of like, maybe not. I'm leaning towards Celia, but we'll have to ultimately wait and see. But it's all about like, she protects some secrets that Lucy had, which I guess like, well, we know some of the secrets that Lucy had were some of the things connected to, well, the fact of the matter is that, Sebastian and Celia were having an affair. Obviously, Everett kind of already knew about that, kind of even more motivation for the ship to go down and everything. But the fact is, it's just, I don't know. It has to be something else that led to Lucy getting killed. Because it doesn't seem like it's just that. Or maybe that's a precursor to something else she stumbled across. Because it's like, oh, the key to her secrets, I've hidden it. And obviously Nancy goes looking for it. But she was quoting something which Nick was like, oh, those aren't just random things. Those are Bible verses. Those are from Psalms specifically. So now they have to try and track down like a book where this would be. But then like they talk to the dude who works there, that they kind of become buddies with, who's like, oh yeah, that strange dude you saw, because that Nancy experienced it at one point. She saw some dude that was kind of out of focus, like she saw him down the hall, and then every time she turned around it seemed like he was further away. His name's Mr. Roper, because obviously the mental facility, part of it used to belong to the Roper family, and it turns out the parents and the kids died one day mysteriously with smiles on their face. We'll get to that soon enough. In one particular room, and Nancy wants to go investigate that. Obviously, Nick wants to go with her, but she's like, nah, give you 10 minutes. You're going to be the one out here to come and rescue me as the time comes up. Now, while that's all happening, because that's just a whole thing in itself, there's the other side of the episode where we have everything with Carson, who is literally being, obviously the hitman is getting ready to kill Carson any opportunity he gets. So Carson tries to call Nancy for help, but that doesn't work out, considering the fact is Nancy's obviously off with Nick and George trying to do that whole situation. So what ends up happening though is that Ace picks up, and Ace is trying to handle this. He goes to the one person he can under these circumstances, and that's Ryan, to get Ryan to kind of, because it's like, because Ryan is like, oh, my dad wouldn't do that. It's like the same dad that didn't bring down a ship that killed a whole bunch of people, more recently trying to run me and my girlfriend off the road. So it's like, yeah, don't kind of, I mean, to be fair, he's right. His dad had nothing to do with this. This was all his mom, which I think Ryan kind of underestimates kind of how I think he recognizes kind of the evil in his dad, but it's still a thing of like, oh, that's my dad. I think he just isn't quite willing to see his mom for the way she is. And I think no one else is kind of giving I don't think a lot of people are giving her credit for being just as involved. Because I think a lot of people are just thinking it's Everett. It's like, she's just as involved, if not pulling just as many strings, if not all the strings, herself. So, but, we'll see. But obviously, Ryan is reluctant to kind of help, and obviously Ace is trying to get Bess to help, which Bess is kind of dealing with an issue all on her own because obviously she's got to meet up with, what's her name, Amaya. I got to meet up with her and try to make a good impression because this will mean, business dealings between the Marvins and Amaya's family. So obviously Bess doesn't want to mess things up. But obviously, you had Ace kind of giving her a pep talk that the fact of the matter is she's got this. Because the fact is, he's like, you literally fooled all of us thinking that you were just some, rich socialite. You literally fooled us for months. So the fact of the matter is kind of fake it till you make it type of situation. And she met Amaya, and Amaya was just, not the friendliest. It's just kind of sit here, shut up, and let me do business. I even love at one point, Bess was like, yeah, don't bitch-splain to me. Because she kind of saw through Amaya a little bit, and I thought it was kind of interesting because because obviously Amaya kind of got up in her business because Ace is, texting her about the whole situation. She's like, oh, so this is really interesting. So Amaya's like, oh, you might be more fascinating than I took you credit for. So she kind of gets involved, but Bess kind of sees through her, and it's like, you pretend like you're cold-hearted, but the fact of the matter is you kind of wear your heart on your sleeve because the fact is that ring you said it belongs to someone you hate. It's because that person hurt you, and you put up these defenses so that no one can get close to you. It's interesting because Bess is, despite her secrets and stuff like that, Bess is kind of open, so it's kind of interesting. She kind of works as kind of a little bit of the opposite, but the fact is that she can kind of, I think it kind of speaks volumes of kind of Bess's empathy and sympathy, considering the fact that she could kind of read that on Amaya. I thought that's kind of, because for her it's kind of understanding people like that. She might not be the most business savvy person. That was the quote specifically. It was like, don't bitch splain business or something to her. But kind of seeing through people kind of a little bit. It's kind of like her specialty. So obviously working together with Amaya, Bess sets up the whole situation to get Ryan to help with this whole Carson situation, because on top of all that, Carson's about ready, the dude is in line about ready to jump out, ready to stab Carson. Lo and behold, he's getting transferred. I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I was like, oh, maybe they pull some stuff together. Lo and behold, it's actually Ace in a van picking him up. And I love, he's like, what is your plan? He's like, the fact of the matter is you hacked in and changed my transfer. You pretended to be an officer. You stole this van. And he's like, and I just made a lane change without a signal. And that just happened right now. But obviously it's like, it's like, you need to take me back. But obviously Ace is like, no way. Like, if I take you back, you're going to die. So we need to, this needs to happen, and it's like Carson has to reluctantly, obviously he appreciates his life being saved. And I love the whole situation. And it's like, all right. So, and he's like, I know this is like the one, he's like, I know exactly where, he's like, don't tell me the place you're taking me, the safe place you're taking me is my house. And Ace is like, you can pretend. Where do you want to pretend I'm taking you? I love that. And obviously it turns into this whole thing because the cops show. For one, Ace being like, all right, no, I'm good. I got this. I got the axe. I'll cut you free and everything. And just Drew being, Carson being so reluctant. And I love Ace kind of saying, don't look at me. And he swings the axe. But I love that it turns into a whole thing, like the cops are outside, and like I love Ace being the one that's doing all the talking and stuff like that. Be like, get the camera footage, and he says Karen, and he's like, too forceful? I love that. Obviously, sadly, there was no good angle on the camera, so there was no proof of anything happening. So any attempt to kind of put this in front of a judge to show that all this had to be done in order to make sure that Ace's life, that Carson's life wasn't in danger. I am surprised. It is interesting because the whole complicated thing is Karen is willing to listen because, well, let's not forget her and Carson obviously go back. Obviously her and Kate were best friends, but also, really good friends. Well, I think best friends. But also, obviously, there's things between Karen and Carson, which I think complicates this a little bit. But I think that's why she's willing, because she really recognizes that Ace is just trying to do the right thing. I even love it at that moment when it's like, yeah, you can't find anything on the camera footage. And Ace is like, oh, no. And then Carson turns around. It turns out that he picked up the other line to hear the conversation. So, but, Bess, trying to use her position as a Marvin, is making a promise to Ryan. It's like, you help out with this situation, the Marvins will owe you a favor, and I will do whatever it is you want me to do, which obviously kind of making a deal with the devil, but I guess the devil, right? And Amaya kind of having her back kind of legitimizes like the offer and stuff like that. So, but I love Bess being like, the fact of the matter is, I kind of got. Well, I love that Bess kind of went off on Ryan for a bit, being like, dude, I basically did more. Starting from nothing, I did more in 6 months than you've basically done in your entire life. It was like, yo, shade has been thrown. But the fact that she's also like, I got a badass mentor like Amaya behind me too. So I am curious to find out what it is that Ryan is going to want at the end of the day. But obviously he sends Ace a recording. And I even thought it was kind of, there's that, like I said, it shows that every once in a while Ryan can be a decent enough guy, because he's like, I mean, it's not decent. Is kind of a weird word to say in this regard, but he was like, this makes us even for what my dad did to you. It's like, okay, sure. But if it means sparing Carson's life, then whatever. But that's why I'm like, it's a little douchey to be like, oh, this makes us even for my dad trying to kill you. It's like, we're in the process of saving someone else's life from your dad, which in fact, it's not your dad, it's actually your mom. But that's a whole caveat within itself. But yeah. So what's also interesting though is, that Amaya and Bess have kind of grown from this situation in the sense of like, oh yeah, they kind of like, Amaya's like, I kind of, was so quick to kind of judge you, but obviously you're more than I expected. And obviously Elizabeth is texting her and being like, oh yeah, it's, how did everything go? And so obviously she made it clear that like, she explained like that this whole thing was never meant to kind of go down that lane. It was supposed to be just a business thing. It was never kind of like a potentially things going further thing, but maybe that might be an issue, especially because, it's like, it's probably going to be a compromise on her relationship with Elizabeth, just kind of like having to kind of put her position as a Marvin first and foremost before anyone else, because family comes first type of situation, especially like what they're trying to build and everything. So while all that's going down, interestingly enough, Celia is pretty smart. She made sure to kind of disguise her voice. We never heard this, but we hear the other side of the conversation. Or it makes me wonder, did Ryan modify it to kind of keep his mom safe? Do you think? I don't think he did. I think she was just smart to, because they've been doing stuff like this for a while, so they know how to cover their tracks. But because it's interesting, because Celia was like, oh, I know what you did. Your dad's going to be so disappointed. So I'm curious because, like I said, Ryan's positioned himself in a way, because obviously he was planning. He made it clear that like, oh, he was going to take over the family, but it's like now he's got to deal with like the aftermath of this from his dad, but also his mom, because she's in, like I said, I think she's trying to keep herself, in Ryan's eyes of not being as deep and dark in his as their dad. That's what I'm thinking, but we'll ultimately kind of have to wait and see on that front. So. While all that's going down, Nancy goes into that room, and obviously the bugs are crawling everywhere. It's interesting because that room in particular, at least like just, it looked more together than the rest of the, because it seemed like that the rest of the place was 100% decaying from a, once again, I'm forgetting the word, it's not moss. Decay might be the right word. Regardless, like I said, I feel like such an idiot forgetting the word. But, nevertheless, she goes in there, and while that's all happening, obviously the dude that was like, oh, he's on their side, ends up pulling a fire alarm, and we find out, oh, he's not actually, one of the caretakers at the place. He's actually a patient in the facility. He just stole a uniform. It's like, okay, that was a twist I didn't expect, so that was interesting. But then Nancy gets trapped in the room upon her finding the key, which ended up being like a car key. I said card key, but I don't know. It's got numbers on it, so it might not. I'd assume it'd be like a card key to something or somewhere, but whatever the case may be. But Nancy's sadly trapped in her room, and we see her kind of passing out. And then she wakes up and she's in her home, and Carson's like, hey, your mom's fixing something. She's like, oh, good. And it's like, at that point, you're like, obviously you see her waking up and you're like, oh, it's a dream. But now it fully explains what it meant when like the whole Roper family died with a smile on their face. It seems like whatever this evil is, basically, it puts you in a paradise. Like, it puts you in a place that you're so happy. And while you're kind of stuck in this daydream, this dream that kind of keep you happy and complicit, I guess if I had to, it's kind of like Batty Bats from certain I was about to say certain aspects of Batty Bat from Charming, Chilling Adventures of Sabrina, but nevertheless, like I said, it's meant to kind of docile you, make you happy. It's like, oh, you're in a wonderful, beautiful dream while you're slowly dying. Like maybe it's just kind of like your life force is being sucked away by it, or just you stay in this state for so long, not moving, and you just die from. Well, because there was no signs of understanding why they died, just that they died with a smile on their face and everything. So. Seems like that's what they're setting up the whole situation to be with Nancy, but we'll ultimately have to wait and see where next week's episode takes us with all of this. But really, that's all I want to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.